here's a good question for all of us, whether we're thinking about just somebody in a job, in any kind of role. We think about kids in school. There's this big conversation right now around how we all want critical thinkers. And it's interesting because when you talk to business leaders, you talk to school leaders, the students, everybody agrees that we need critical thinkers, right? You know, it's almost like we're too fast to agree on that. And when we start to ask people harder questions about that, it's funny how fast that definition changes, right? So I'll just make a broad statement. If I talk to academics about critical thinking, their understanding of critical thinking is the classic model, right? Somebody comes up with an idea, and then there's a doctoral dissertation and a defense where a whole bunch of people literally critique that idea. They try and tear it down. So their primary role is to shred an idea, right? That's one form of critical thinking. Now, when we talk to business leaders about critical thinking, and then you start asking, well, what do you mean by that? They start talking about some different things. Some people will talk about that critical thinker who tears an idea apart and identifies all the problems with the methodology or whatever it is, but I hear them start to talk about things like an original thinker, a creative thinker, a divergent thinker. And many people know Sir Ken Robinson. He's a world-renowned education creativity expert. And he talks about how in our schools right now, we're actually teaching creativity out of kids, right? The idea of divergent thinking, that when we're toddlers, we're actually better divergent thinkers than when we become adults, because we get taught, no, that's not how a brick is used. A brick is used for building a building, and that's the only use of a brick. But great divergent thinkers can list 75 different ways to use a brick. And so I'm just curious what you think about this. Are we really all in agreement that we need critical thinkers, or is it more to that? I mean, do we even agree on that? Do we even have a common language on it? I'm curious what you think. We'll just go around. Each of you can answer the question.
Start with Johnny.
Okay, Johnny gets to start.
So what I have found, coming from industry, is what they really mean when they say critical thinking is we want problem solvers. Okay. We want people who have the ability to think around the corner to help me solve a problem. It's less about this theoretical, educational, academic concept of critical thinking, because that may be true of the academy, where you're encouraged. That's sort of the process of becoming a tenured professor or published in something. But at the end of the day, business wants to solve a problem. You think about a company like Uber. At the end of the day, you know, it's not about have you thought about and analyzed the industry, the taxi industry, and that's critical thinking and da-da-da. How are we going to innovate and solve a problem such that we can attract customers? And that's what entrepreneurs are getting at. The academic might be focused on critical thinking. Right. My experience is industry, those in commerce, want to solve a problem so that someone will spend money.
Yesterday, I spent an hour with a phenomenal entrepreneur. He's the founder of 1776 here in DC, which is a great incubator with 240 small businesses. Well, he was kicked out of school in 3rd grade and 7th grade. And then he went to an alternative school. And then he went to Thomas Jefferson High School. But, you know, he didn't do well. He started a company when he was 18, sold it when he was 24, and then he went to Oxford. And his description of Oxford's education versus one of the finest, well, actually the finest public high school in the United States, which has a very set curriculum. At Oxford, you basically, you know, have no tests for 3 years. You have no kind of set classes. You are assigned topics, and then you go explore the Bodleian Library. You can go to lectures if you want. But it's 3 years of incredibly unstructured, intense learning with some of the world's greatest thinkers, you know, coming through occasionally to spark your interest. And so his description of entrepreneurs and the ones that can take chaos or an unstructured environment and create something out of it, his definition of how you can tell if someone's going to succeed or not is how quickly are they iterating? Are they using the scientific method? They've got an idea in mind. They have to see, is it going to work? If it's not going to work, you adjust it. You don't just tear it down and throw it out.
Right.
And so he said he can tell within a week or two if the team is going to take the feedback from customers and iterate on it quickly enough, and he knows they're going to be successful. Whether immediately or down the road, he knows they're going to be successful. So I don't know if that's critical thinking or if it's, he called it the scientific journey for a scientific method for testing and failing and testing until you get it right. But it was exciting to hear about how quickly he could identify the entrepreneurs that had that talent to do that enough times until they're succeeding.
Yeah, that's great.
I really agree with John. You know, somebody said to me you know, we're a lab and innovate. If somebody said, I'm a critical thinker, I don't have any value for you.
Right.
But if you said I'm a problem solver and you actually demonstrate that,
right.
you move through this company so fast. But critical, you know, we learned this at Gallup, you know, with their word combinations, people just love. So you said, you want a critical, oh yeah, I want that. How about affordable care? We'll call it an act. Yeah, whatever that is, I want that. That's what I think happened to that. Now, we made something real hard to make called the world poll, consistent sampling frames cost. We actually employed critical thinkers to critically review our methods, and their observations weren't very fun, but they were right. And so they're very ivory tower Princeton types that everybody respects and all that, and they said, you got to do this, you got to do that. And it was so helpful. But real critical thinking is whoever said that was, I agree 100% with that, is a very special thing you do over here to help sharpen your product. But I'm not real high, I'm real high on problem solving and that sort of thing, but.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's just interesting. I mean, I think we do have to have a deeper conversation in this country about what we're all really looking for, because you're right. I think critical thinking just sounds great. And we all go, yep, that's what I need. But we haven't had an honest conversation about that. And what I've just heard from several of you is, you know, there might be better branding in your job search and your ability to think about new companies by focusing on the problem-solving elements of this and not so much critical thinking the way we just kind of throw it away as an easy answer.